When preparing yourself to go through the process and methodology of ethical hacking, we're going to talk about some of the preparation steps and some things that you should have gone over and discovered before the process starts. Right off the bat, I know we've mentioned it several times before, we're going to mention it again. Get sign approval for everything that you do. Clearly communicate your processes, procedures, tools, methodologies, everything. Clearly communicate that with the target. We need to sign any available confidentiality agreements. And I know this may sound strange, but you would almost want to go to the company and say, let me sign a confidentiality agreement. I want you to tell me what my limitations are for information disclosure. If they don't do that, and you carry that information out, keeping in mind that you haven't signed an NDA, you carry the information out, you give it to somebody, it comes up in court, now the court gets to decide what happens and what the limitation should have been. So we want them to clearly define our limitations there. Another very important and often overlooked step in the preparation part is getting approval from collateral parties, such as internet service providers, business partners, customers if necessary. What that means by saying collateral party is someone that may be inadvertently affected by the penetration test that you're performing against this company. Company A may be fully aware and okay with your penetration test, but Company A's business partner, Company B, may be drastically affected if you take down one of the WAN links between the two companies during a vulnerability test of a router. Therefore, because they weren't aware of it, and technically you're affecting their systems, then you're in violation of various USC codes. So, definitely a good point to bring up to the customer because they may not have thought of that. Make sure they understand what the limitations are of what you can do based on federal law and the steps they need to take to get you approval from those collateral parties. We put our team together and go ahead and build our tool knowledge base. What that means is find a team of skilled folks. If you're going to do it alone, that's great. Usually when you perform ethical hacking, it's going to be in a group. We want to go ahead and gather the tools together, and it's important to define the tools early in the process based on the information the customer has given you. And that may mean giving the customer a huge spreadsheet of 10,000 tools and say, hey, we're going to use some of these, especially in a black box environment. Anyway, we need to put together those teams and the tools to get everything defined early in the game. And speaking of defining things, we want to define our goals. What exactly does the customer want us to do? Have a clear goal statement, a project plan put together and ready to rock and roll for that, so you know what your target is. We want to identify ground rules. A lot of companies already being a little nervous about the concept of vulnerability assessment and penetration testing really are going to be nervous about this. So we want to be able to go in and say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to perform this test, and this test. And this test may in fact cause a denial of service. By identifying that early, they can say, look, we don't want to run that test. We want to run a different test that may be a little less intrusive. The reason that that's important is if you tell the company, I'm going to go in, I'm going to analyze your systems and find vulnerabilities. You go in there, and when you're running Nessus against this particular computer, it crashes that system, costs the company millions of dollars. They can come back and say, you didn't tell us about this. You didn't identify that these are possible risks. So making sure that you understand what their limitations are for tolerance on this vulnerability assessment process and making sure they understand what the risks are. So by setting these ground rules, it makes it so that everybody can play nice on the playground. We want to set a schedule. A lot of companies don't want you coming in and monkeying with their systems during business hours. So do we need to postpone that to a weekend? Maybe a holiday, for example, when there's not a lot of traffic on the network. So clearly identify, again, kind of falling into the ground rules category of when can we do this? In addition to all of this, we want to notify the appropriate parties. Now, depending on the type of test that you're doing, whether it be a white box, black box, or a back-end test, I've seen scenarios where a chief information security officer would actually have someone come in and not tell anybody in the department that they're going to be doing this just to see how well the department would handle it. So depending on how you're going about this process and how the company wants you to do it, you want to notify the appropriate parties. Even if they know it's going to happen, the morning of or the night of, send them an email. Hey, I'm about to get started. Here's what we're going to do tonight, just as a reminder, so that they can be aware of that.